Ice, ice, baby, it's mold making time. Hi, I'm James again, and in case you're not familiar with what RTV molds are, they are room temperature vulcanizing molds, and they're very versatile in the jewelry making industry and can be used both for traditional sort of wax injection for production castings, as well as they're high enough temperature resistance that you can even pour pewter directly into them and not cause damage to the mold. So we're just going to get right into it. Now for this particular video, I've designed and 3D printed a mold frame so that the original piece can be mounted inside of the frame, and then that frame will serve as a mold for casting the RTV mold making material into. And since it is in the fall, we are all getting into the Halloween spirit, so you might notice kind of a theme to the samples shown in this video. Now, given the dimensions of this mold frame, the original pieces that are going to be held within it and taken a mold from should be no bigger than about an inch in diameter and no more than about 1/8 of an inch thick. Now, certainly you could create your own mold frames and really use this material for almost any basic jewelry size piece. Now, every piece that you're going to be taking a mold of is going to have its own particular kind of issues, but I'm just using this little Happy Witch pendant as an example. So this was done from an original drawing, and I extruded a bit in 3D before 3D printing, and then also added kind of an oval ring around it, both to facilitate the wax injection of it and the potential pewter casting. Now, these particular details and this thinner piece, I'm not anticipating that it's going to work so well for pewter, but it should work just fine for wax injection. Now, the first step in preparing your piece to take a mold is going to be to attach it to some sort of sprue cone former. And what this will become is that negative space where you're either going to be pouring the pewter into the mold, or you're going to be using the nozzle of the wax injecting machine to shoot wax into your mold. So it's very important when adhering your piece to this forming piece that it is straight in every dimension, so that it is, look at it from all angles and make sure that it is centered and straight up and down. This will help both with the mold making process, cutting the mold apart, and then also with either the injection of wax into the piece or the casting of pewter. Now, overall, I was very happy with the quality of the printing of these mold frames. However, as with any process, there's going to be slight irregularities. And so what I noticed was a slight warping of the piece from the original digital file into the final print. As you can see, that slight space in the middle there between the top and bottom of the mold frame. So what I would recommend, depending on whatever mold frame you're using, is to tape all the way around to make sure that there isn't going to be any leakage of mold material, and then also use some sort of clamping material like large binder clips to keep the two parts of your mold frame all together. All right, so you have your piece secured and precisely positioned within your mold frame. And now you're ready to mix the two parts of the room temperature vulcanizing material. And it's important that the parts A and B be as close as possible to the exact same amounts. And for this particular size, I found that these are 2 tablespoon cups, so I'm using about 2 of each. And I've sped this video up about 8 times to give you a sense that this is a very viscous material. So it's sort of like making mold material out of honey. So you need to pour it very slowly and evenly. That's why the mold frame had some vent holes to facilitate the air being displaced while pouring the mold material in. But this entire segment was about 10 minutes of regular time. And so you just need to be very patient, very conscientious with your mixing process, and that it's evenly mixed and slowly poured into the mold. Okay, after you've filled your mold frame and carefully placed it inside of the pressure pot, you want to secure the 4 clamps to the pressure pot. It's recommended that you cure this material under pressure to force any possible air bubbles that have gotten into the mold frame from the mixing and everything else that might cause little warts or problems in your mold original. So I'm securing those 4 frames, making sure that I don't jostle the pressure pot too much and cause any of the mold frames to fall over, and I'm ready to apply the pressure hose to it. Now, after the recommended curing time in the pressure pot, which is usually going to be around an hour, you can remove the mold frame and your mold and put it in a heated drying box. Now, I've done some tests, and you want to be sure that you do not overheat your mold material, but only if it's still just like a little bit sticky. You can apply a little bit of heat to get it to fully cure so that you can be ready to cut your mold apart and then also clean up your mold frames. Cutting molds is an art in and of itself, and some people, this is a majority of their job in making molds for jewelry production. So you want to be extremely careful and conscientious with this. You want to work very slowly because you're using a fair amount of pressure to pull the sides of the mold apart, and you're also working with a really sharp X-Acto blade or even a scalpel in some cases. So you could see here that I'm slowly pulling the mold apart while I'm cutting, just cut after cut, slowly down to the center line of my piece. Now, one thing that I love about this particular RTV material is that it's slightly transparent so that you can see your piece within it. So you can work your way slowly towards your piece, cut after cut, and trying to meet it on the midpoint or the parting line of your piece. Keeping in mind, you're going to be either having to remove waxes or pewter castings from this mold. So ideally, you don't have to cut your mold completely apart. You can leave a little bit of extra mold material at the end of your piece, opposite of the sprue cone. And so you can use that as a hinge. Otherwise, you're going to have to cut little keys into your mold so that it registers back together each time that you put it together in order to make a casting. So you can see here, I'm pulling the sides of the mold apart, slowly going in, cut after cut, cutting down to my piece evenly in the middle so that it'll be easy to remove either the injected waxes or the castings out of the finished mold. Now that you have your RTV or room temperature vulcanized mold ready, you've removed your original piece, we're going to cover how to use the wax injector to inject waxes into your mold. Every wax injector is going to have its own personality and its own particulars. The one here at the University of North Texas Metal and Jewelry Studio, this is our wax injector, and it does take a bit of time, depending how much wax is inside of it, for it to come up to temperature and be ready to start injecting. So if you're not familiar with a wax injecting machine, basically it is a pressurized and heated environment where you have particular waxes that are used for injection into molds for jewelry casting. And so it takes a bit of time to heat up, remelt that wax inside, get up to pressure, and be ready to inject your molds. For our wax injection machine, this is the guidelines that you want to be sure to follow. So you do not want to turn the wax up above 140 degrees. There's a thermometer on the top of the machine to indicate that. And then you should have the wax injector air pressure set to those amounts and never higher than 12 psi. In our studio, we have a regulator with the air line mounted on the wall over by the sink, and this is where you're going to attach in the air line that's going to lead to the wax injection machine. Make sure, since this goes across a doorway, that it does not become a tripping hazard, but this is where you'll plug it in, and then you can also adjust the pressure on the other side with the regulator on the wax injection machine. Now, when the wax injection machine has reached temperature and you're ready to begin injecting waxes into your mold, there are some very important safety precautions. You want to be sure that you have gloved hands as well as a face shield, just in case any of the hot wax does squirt out of the sides. I also find it very helpful to have plates that will apply clamping pressure to your mold and keep it nice and flat and square. And you want to be sure that you're pressing the mold straight up to the nozzle of the machine for a sufficient amount of time, depending on your piece, to make sure that you're getting the wax fully injected into your mold. Now, it's very common that your first couple sort of wax injection attempts will fail and not completely fill your mold, usually because it takes a little bit of time to kind of heat up your mold to the ideal temperature where the wax is going to flow through it. So don't be discouraged. Just stick with it. Give it a couple attempts. You do want to give depending on the thickness of your piece, it is going to take a couple minutes for your piece to cool down enough that you can properly demold it, even if it's not a complete cure. Another thing that I like about this mold material is that you can hold it up to the light and see if the wax has completely filled the cavity or not. We do have a wax recycle bin, so for any of those injections of your waxes that don't completely fill your mold, or there's some irregularities that you're not happy with, just return those pieces to the wax recycle bin and we'll be able to melt those down and make them into great pieces in the future. Now, a couple things that I want to point out with some of these samples of the little Happy Witch pendant. You can see the 3D printed original on the left, still attached to the sprue former. And if you notice for the wax injected pieces, some of the kind of lumpiness around the ring was caused by that overheated mold I mentioned, where I put it too close to the drying lamp and I overheated the mold in the attempt to get it to fully cure. So you want to be sure that you don't do that and cause deformation of your molds. But you can see here that some of the castings are actually filling out the mold completely. Others might be some incomplete, and you can decide what's workable and what you're going to ultimately cast with the lost wax casting process, or what you're just going to chuck in the recycling bin. Now, here's a side-by-side comparison of injected waxes from the mold that was overheated. You can see that lumpiness on the right there, as opposed to the second mold that I made that I was a bit more patient with, did not put too close to the drying lamp, and did not overheat. And you can see that there's no mold lumpiness there in the wax from where the mold was caused to bubble and deform a little bit. Now I'm going to move into covering some very basic pewter casting. I have other videos that cover all sorts of aspects of working with pewter, so this is just going to be a quick overview. And I highly recommend this kind of setup for an electric melting crucible. So this ensures that you have the pewter at the right temperature for casting. If you've overheated the pewter, you can boil out some of the materials that make it that pewter alloy, and also you can cause damage to your room temperature vulcanizing mold. So I like this setup. One modification I've made is to take electrical tape and tape the cord back further on the handle to be sure that it doesn't drape and come in contact with any of the heating elements. I also like to prop it on its stand with this kind of two-part kiln brick, and all of it is dedicated only to working with pewter. So this is a nice stable environment where you can safely melt the pewter and not worry about any possible damage to the electrical cord, and that you have a stable place for that melting crucible to rest. I know this isn't the most elegant setup, but I find using the sort of disposable aluminum baking pan is a nice area to catch any overflow cast pewter, and then using these thicker plates to clamp the sides of the mold so that you're keeping the mold flat, but not clamping with the C-clamp so much that it's going to squish your mold and cause deformation. So this is a nice rigid setup that I have found great success in casting in these molds. Now, an essential step before casting pewter into these RTV molds is to lightly dust your mold with talc. So apparently in 2020, they finally realized that having talc in baby powder was a health hazard. And so you do have to check either getting pure talc or getting an older bit of baby powder like we have here in the studio that still has talc in the ingredients list is essential, and you want to have a light dusting on your mold, and I will show you why. Now, if you don't use talc in your mold and just jump right in and cast your pewter, you're going to get these kind of castings that have this, what I think is actually really interesting, bizarre porosity in the castings. And in this case, with the sort of the Halloween theme, I think it fits in nicely, and you could do that on purpose, but it's certainly not very controllable at all and can cause other sorts of defects in the casting. So keep that in mind, but you need just very, very little talc, and that is going to cause a significant difference. So here's the castings before doing the talc, and I'm going to follow up with the casting after using the talc. So everything was done exactly the same, just a little bit of talc added into the mold there, and you can see just such a significant difference in the quality of the pewter casting into that mold. Now again, it could be an effect that you like, and in this particular case, remember that your original with a successful pewter casting is going to have to be a bit thicker. And I tried that other Happy Witch, which worked great for wax injecting, but just really did not turn out well because of the thinness of the areas within the mold. So if you are thinking of pewter casting, definitely recommend having a much thicker original. In this case, it was probably a brass piece plate closer to about 1/8 of an inch thick. So you're still going to have some little areas to clean up, but much more successful with the pewter casting process that we'll now take a look at. Here's a short video of me casting. I'm using the spoon to skim any oxides that have resulted on the top of the melt, and then I'm using the edge of the mold frame plates to stabilize the crucible as pouring, and it is possible that you might have to pour a couple times depending on the particular shape of your mold and piece. So I hope this video has been helpful for you, and that you enjoy working with room temperature vulcanizing or RTV molds as much as I do, and I would love to see what you end up creating. So definitely I hope you have some successful results, and share them out and check them out, and of course, happy Halloween! If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to hit that subscribe button so that you can hear from me when I post future videos. Thanks for stopping by.